You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like any other time, we have another amazing show for y'all lined up today. And I have to take a pause and say, it's election day, man. November 5th is that big time in America, so make sure you exercise your right to vote, and make sure you allow your voice to be heard today. So without further ado, we're going to be talking to our special guest today, Shirley Buck. She is a holistic trauma coach and a healer. So we're going to be looking into some details about trauma and holistic healing. She is the founder, owner of Red Leaf Alternative Healing. Go to her website, shirleybuck.com. We're going to learn first a little bit more about her and her personal story. First and foremost, Shirley, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate your time. So for our audience, kind of explain a little bit about your approach in your professional field and kind of educate us on those who may not be aware of that.
I myself am not only a survivor, but an overcomer of years of severe abuse and trauma. I had written a book telling my full story, and at the end of each chapter are tools of how what I've learned and how I applied tools to overcome certain parts of my life. So I don't know if you want me to go into my story a little bit, but that years of depression, anxiety, addictions, I experienced it, and I didn't go through traditional therapy or meds. And I think just because I really didn't have access growing up, I wasn't aware, I didn't have access. I was on the streets at a young age. So when I was 23, engaged and in a safe environment, my life was supposed to be happy at that point because I'd gotten through it all. And that's when I had my breakdown. I guess, my mind had said, okay, you're in a safe environment. Now you need to deal with everything that has happened. So I had a breakdown, and I decided to learn about mindset transformation instead of going the traditional therapy and meds. Not that I'm saying that's wrong for everybody, but for me, myself, I had grown up always learning tidbits of positive thinking, being in control of your thoughts, not letting your thoughts control you. And I really was always interested in that. So I really delved into studying that, learning that, and really created a beautiful life for myself where I'm happy, peaceful, have a beautiful family. And I wanted to help others achieve that as well. And I've had clients that have been in therapy for 2 or 3 years. And I think this is a good addition because a lot of times therapy has you focus on the problem. And I have a 90-day course that kind of does the opposite. It teaches you, first of all, to take ownership and then to move through different tools and exercises that help you change your thought process and to be in control of your thoughts rather than let your mind just either be on autopilot or think negatively. And it's not just for those who's been through trauma and abuse. It's anyone who really wants to improve their life, because it's simple to say, change your mind, change your life, but it is true.
When you look back before you started Red Leaf Alternative Healing, at what point was the turning point for you when you realized that you need to seek help or at least start the process of your healing journey?
That was when I had my breakdown when I was 23 years old. So that was many years ago. I'm a grandmother now. But it wasn't an easy journey. It was a hard journey, and it took me years to learn all of these tools and exercises although I improved rather quickly, it did take years for me to just keep studying and learning and studying and learning. And I just thought maybe I can make this process easier for someone else just starting and wanting to change their life, to overcome, not let their past define who they are. And just one powerful sentence is, okay, so the past only exists if you give it thought. So if you think about it, the past is done. It's gone. So, I mean, you could choose to remember good things because those things make you feel good. But all the trauma and abuse that I had been through, I don't live there anymore. I don't dwell in it. I don't think it because it's gone. The only way it has power is if I give it thought. So if I learn how to not give it thought, it doesn't exist. So it's simple processes, but it's not always easy.
When you look at self-compassion, we kind of hear that be discussed when people talk about the topic of trauma. What did that mean for you? What did that look like for you? And what
that was probably the hardest step. Self-compassion, self-love, because you're pretty much, for me, my whole life, I was told I'm nobody. My mother, before she committed suicide when I was 13, and she tried to take my life as well, she always told me, I only had you to try to save the marriage, and the marriage was ruined anyway. So she really didn't want me. And she had a string of boyfriends that were just terrible. And my parents were both deaf. So she had an extra element to try to heal because she couldn't hear. She wasn't getting information as I wouldn't say as easily as people who can hear, but it's definitely more of a challenge. So, for me to learn to love myself was probably the hardest. And I'll tell you I remember the first time I started to love myself. It was an exercise I did where I went back and witnessed me as a child going through an abusive situation, and me as an adult wanting to run in and save that little girl and protect her and take care of her. And I went in and held her and said, you're strong, you're beautiful, you are worthy. And I was starting to talk to the little girl. And in realization, I was like, wow, that little girl is me. Why am I so hard on me? That's me, that little girl. And when you start to do exercises and things like that to realize, who you really are and what you have to offer. And I believe that we are a product of Source, God, whatever, whoever you want to identify that with. And when you start to learn that you are love, that your real essence, your true essence is love and kindness, it may get boggled up through different experiences and you may get cut off from the source of love. But once you learn to open yourself up again and know your worth, it's pretty powerful.
Once again, listen on Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Shirley Buck. You can go to her website, shirleybuck.com. When you mentioned your parents both were deaf, correct?
Yes.
Explain to our audience, give them a better picture what it was like growing up, having to deal with that, and how were you able to understand what was going on at such a young age, and how did that impact you as a child?
Well, it was kind of a normal part of life because I was born into it. So sign language was really my first language. It is very challenging because you become their ears, you become their voice. And I mean, I was battling credit card companies at 8 years old on the phone trying to get interest rates lowered. And I interpreted my parents' divorce at 5 years old. My dad would get me on some weekends. Sometimes he'd be consistent, sometimes he wouldn't. And he went to Stony Island Church of Christ, and I was an interpreter there for a deaf group. at 12 years old. So it holds its challenges because I missed a lot of school because my mother, who didn't work, I was in welfare stations with her constantly. And back then, if you waited all day and if you didn't be called, you got to be back there at 8:00 the next morning, you know. And I missed a lot of school doing these things for my mother. So I was constantly, you know, we were constantly having to go to meetings because why wasn't I in school? Well, because, you know, my parents are deaf, and my mother became an abusive alcoholic, and she had gotten raped and she got pregnant, and I had to go to an abortion clinic with her at 10 years old and be her interpreter. So there is a lot of responsibility put on a young child. And that was, you know, the abuse and trauma, and that's put on top of that. You know, there's a group called CODA where they're children of deaf adults. So they're adults who were children of deaf people. And I've never been to the support group, but I hear that it's very wonderful because you do become this caregiver and you're trying to fix everybody all the time. And it took me a long time to realize, you know, especially in relationships, I was picking these people who needed so much help, but it was detrimental to myself. So, you know, there's all these things that come in play when you're a child of a deaf person, or in my case, both of them were deaf. And I was constantly being torn to interpret for their friends and things like that. So, yeah, it's a difficult role.
Looking back, how you work with your clients, one can imagine, just listening to your story, that you probably had a lot of experience when it comes to patience. So when you look at your clients, how did patience from a young age, having to deal with your parents, how did that help you kind of understand your clients on a deeper level?
I think, I don't know if it's patience, it's more of compassion. I think I use because I've experienced a lot of trauma in different ways. So when somebody comes to me and say, I've been through this and this is what I'm feeling, I genuinely understand. I didn't learn about this from a book or you know, something that taught me like a PhD to get in there and work with the mind and do this same process with each individual. I'm able to be more customized because I can say, wow, you know what? I understand that feeling. I've had it. I've been there. I've been through depression, anxiety, eating disorders, addictions. So I have a wide variety of experiences to have compassion for my clients. And I guess it's patience too, because sometimes I'll ask in the very first, you know, I do a free 45-minute consultation with people, and from the very beginning, sometimes I'll say, "Do you want to be happy?" And they'll stop and think. And I'm like, okay, you have to know you want this. You have to know you want this, because if you don't, then I can't help you at this point. You know, so being honest, being patient, being compassionate, all of that plays in. And I think that's due to my own experience.
And that's an interesting point right there, because understanding that there can be times where people are indecisive. They're not able to make a decision. Is that something that you see quite often, or is that something that maybe is tied to?
I do see it more often than I would expect, because you kind of think like, why wouldn't you want to be happy? Why wouldn't you want to overcome this? But sometimes we're placed, you know, labels are placed on us. And if we're labeled with PTSD, anxiety, depression, and then we're told that's who we are, that becomes our identity. Now we're taking medications to mask that, okay? And So you're not really dealing with it. You're just masking it and going through the motions. And believe me, when I was going through severe anxiety and I was terrified, yes, I wanted a pill that could stop it, and if you're at that edge, I'm not going to tell you it's wrong to take medication. I didn't, but it was terrifying. I'll tell you it was. So, I lost track of what the question was. Okay. So yes, it does happen quite often because you have this label and you kind of feel doomed and this is your identity. And it's not so much that you don't want it as you don't believe that you can achieve it or that you even deserve it. And I think that's where people pause. It's not like they don't really want it. They just don't truly believe they can have it or that they're worthy of having it.
Another thing that is associated with trauma is triggers. When you look at that, is that something that you experience yourself personally? And if so, how do you overcome that?
The triggers, when you are triggered, there are exercises you can do. And it depends on what kind of triggers and what kind of, if you have anxiety or depression or whatever. But one of the tools for anxiety is, you get this trigger and you kind of figure out why, and then you write. In writing is important to get it out. You write down what is the delusion in that thought. You kind of show yourself like, okay, this is not really happening to me right now. I'm feeling this because I experienced this in the past, and you kind of start writing things down that will show you that you're in another place now and it's a delusional thought, and you start to bring your anxiety down. There's other ways too, just like stopping and imagining yourself in a place that you really love being. There's different tools for different triggers, but there definitely are tools for triggers.
This is Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Shirley Buck. And go to her website, shirleybuck.com. And wrapping this up, we have about 8 minutes left. Let's talk about how you serve your clients. What are the different resources that you make available, and what does the process look like when you're trying to get someone on board?
So the different resources, I did write a book because I wanted to share my story so that people can see that even in the most severe abuse and trauma, that you can overcome it and you can be happy and you can build a life that you love. So my book and other books, a lot of other books are great resources. The Feel Good Handbook. I mean, that's an amazing book. So there are different resources, but the process is someone goes to my website, they click on my calendar, and they book a free 45-minute consultation call with me. And that's where we can talk about their customized goal that they want to achieve. So I had somebody come to me and it's like, I was kind of embarrassed to come to you because I read your book and I knew you've been through so much trauma. I really haven't been through a lot of trauma, but I just can't think I can't think positively, and it's affecting my life. I'm negative, I'm angry, and I need to find out why, and I need to change it. So you don't necessarily, like I said, have to go through trauma and abuse. And at the end of our 3 months together, which is my course is 90 days with weekly lessons and daily activities. And we talk once a week through that course because the talk is what makes it custom. The course is just to teach you how to think differently, and exercises to help you actually enjoy life. And I'm going to tell you, one of the most important things is please be childlike whenever you can. If you can do it every day, I don't care if it's dancing, being silly, playing in the rain, whatever it is, be childlike, because it's important to play and enjoy life, not just be this serious, go through the motion, responsible. If you're not silly and you're not enjoying life, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. So anyway, the process, sorry, I keep getting off track. So the process when we're on the phone that's where I customize it to whatever it is that you want to achieve. And we go from there.
When you see how you've been able to overcome these challenges and you're productive, you're helping people, we all on the outside look in like, okay, that looks kind of easy. But truthfully, we all have our rainy days, our not so great days. What are some of the things that you remind yourself, even though you have success, you can still have some rough days? How you keep yourself pressing forward?
It's funny because I just wrote a blog about that I have a Facebook community page, and I just wrote a blog about that because I said, like, from the outside, people could look at my life and say, oh, wow, she's got it all together. She's always happy. And I do have my down days. I do. But I have the tools in my back pocket that help me. So if I'm having a hard day, I learn, first of all, to be compassionate with myself, to not say, oh, you shouldn't be thinking that way. You know better. Like, stop it. I have to be compassionate and say, you know what? You have been through a lot in life, and you are trying to be out there for everybody. So you're talking about your story all the time, and that's not how I heal. I don't live there anymore. So I do have my down days, but I take it slow, and I have compassion, and I do my own course. I pick and choose which week I want to work with, and I'm lucky too, and to have my children and my grandchildren, because they are a huge source of joy to me. So I can go play with my grandkids anytime I want. I have them twice a week, which helps me. I can get on the phone with my son or my daughter, and those things lift me up. And so if you have people like that, it's important to talk to them. You don't necessarily have to talk about your problem if you don't want to. But if you just want to just be lifted, talk to positive people around you. Simple exercises, write down 10 things you're grateful of. And sometimes that's a hard thing to do. 10 things sounds like, oh, that should be easy. 10 things aren't always so easy, but when you're actually struggling to think about the things you're grateful for, your mind is in a place where it's thinking of positive things in your life, and you're digging deeper than you normally would. So there's all kinds of tools that help me, and I don't have a whole lot of down days, but I do have them for sure.
And one more question. Outside of bad days, sometimes it's just life stress. Life stress happens to all of us, just different shapes and sizes and different forms. For you, how do you determine when there's just regular good stress versus maybe potentially self-sabotage stress where we're self-inflicted wounds?
Well, I have there's a session in my course that talks about emotional awareness. So when you're aware of your emotions, when you start to feel that tightness in your chest or that sadness or that heavy feeling, you're on an emotional scale that's towards the depression, anxiety side of the happy, joyful, peaceful side of the spectrum. So now when you're there, I also teach to be aware of your thoughts. So now you're there and you're like, what are my thoughts? What are the things that's making me feel super stressed, whether it's money, a relationship, and things like that? Then you can go through the process of, okay, that's what I'm focusing on. That's why I'm feeling this way. What else can I focus on to get me out of that? And you start moving up the spectrum. Like there's ways you can think of, okay, well, right now I might be in a financial bind, but that doesn't mean I have to stay there. What creative things can I do? I've always been an entrepreneur. I help people find different ways and their talents and their passions and help them do a side thing, which actually sometimes turns into a full-blown business. But if it's relationship wise, it's, you have to work on you are inside and that you're okay, because most of the times when you get happy and you get healthy, there's people going to fall away from your life. And that's another fear people have. I don't want to lose this person. If I get happy and I get healthy, this person's going to go away. But when you learn to love yourself and know that you have these boundaries and that person can go away and you're going to be okay, especially if you have support, you open yourself to be in a receptive mode to receive the healthy people that should be in your life. So it's emotional awareness, moving, being aware of your thoughts and moving to the side of the spectrum of joy and happiness and peace. But it takes work.
once again been listening to I Am Refocused Radio. And you can go to our guest website, shirleybuck.com, and learn more about her services and schedule a call today. Like always, man, this went so fast, but I want to say thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.